Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you. So we are gathered on this warm spring afternoon in May to celebrate the life and to mourn the death of Nance Horowitz. My name is Laurel Leaford. I had the honor of being Nance's minister here at this congregation, the Namaqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. And like all of you, I was shocked and sad at Nance's totally unexpected death on April 6th. So it hit me personally. She leaves a big gap in the congregation that I serve. And I know that for all of us in our diverse and sometimes complicated relationships, that we all miss her. And the reality that she's gone, I think, is still hard, I think, for many of us to even comprehend still. Many of you are here today from Loveland and from Fort Collins, but I know that some of you traveled in order to be here. What I know is that we have people from Bellevue, Washington, and is it Port Townsend, Washington? A lot of people from Wisconsin. So Brookfield, Milwaukee, and Madison. So are there any other places? And Portland, Oregon, right? Brownman and Milwaukee. Oh, Pewaukee. Yeah, I can't figure out some of this Wisconsin stuff. But anyway, all of you are welcome here. And we even have people joining us on Zoom. And this is going to be recorded. And so I also give a greeting and a welcome to those of you who may be watching this recording after today. So I hope that all of you can just trust that whatever feelings and thoughts and memories that you have of Nance, all are welcome here, and all of the thoughts and memories are worthy. So I would like to begin our time together in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, which is to begin a service by lighting a chalice. And this is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. It actually started during World War II, and it represents many things. Today, in our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing, the flame of ongoing life. In this time when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, compassion, and community. And I would also like to invoke the spirits of Nance's parents, I guess also Anne Marie and Carol. So this is Earl Ferguson and Laverne, is it Miskey? And then also Nance's stepson, Matthew Rosnow. Nance Ferguson Horowitz, beloved daughter, sister, devoted wife, mother, stepmother, grandmother, aunt, friend, and neighbor. Nance, world traveler, activist, lover of architecture, classical music, and her cat. Is it Sukhothai? What is it? Sukhothai. So Nance has died. And the truth is that we are always saying farewell in this world. It's the human condition. And we're always standing on the edge of a loss, challenged to make meaning from the silence that is left behind. I should have announced, everyone's, please silence your cell phones. Writer Simone Weil reminds us that the task of grief is twofold and paradoxical. To let go, to grieve honestly at the silence and emptiness left behind, but at the same time to bring the spirit of the deceased into our lives. All of us grieve differently at different times. I think grief often comes in waves. Sometimes the sorrow is so great that it's hard to even function. And then other times there's almost a numbness that makes you perhaps doubt your loyalty or the sense of relief that often comes if there has been suffering. So all of you, with whatever your feelings are, please know that grieving has many different dimensions and it goes on sometimes longer than you would think. But please be gentle with yourselves. And I think this is also a time to be gentle with each other. This afternoon, what we're doing is we're gathering in a community so that we can hold our grief in a common place and take this time to celebrate a life well lived. And I think one of the things with death is that it reminds you how fragile life is and how precious it is. So I would like to invite you to join me in first a moment of silence and then an attitude of prayer, however, whatever that means to you. Spirit of life and love, we are grateful for the gift of a new day, for the simple and miraculous gift of breathing just in and out without effort, without having to think about it. We gather today together to name our loss, to celebrate and remember the life of Nance Horowitz. May our hearts be surrounded with healing. May we see with compassion the shape of a life that is gone from our midst. We give thanks for what Nance taught us, the way she gave of herself, how she used the gifts that life had given her to bless the world in the spirit of love. May our love go with Nance and her love stay with us. In your many names, amen. And will you please remain seated, but we'll sing together a hymn that is often sung in Unitarian Universalist congregations. It's number 123 in the gray hardback hymnal. You may have to share, but let's go ahead and remain seated. So number 123 in the gray hymnal. And let's sing it through with the lyrics one time and then do it a second time, ooh. Carol? So this is Nance's sister, Carol. And what you do is you speak directly into it.
I'm Carol, Nance's oldest sister, and I picked a reading today that was written by our great-grandfather. So my youngest sister Anne, Nance, and I, we never met him, but we knew a lot about him, or stories about him. And I also think this theme kind of goes along with your early statements. And he wrote this just after his 81st birthday. And he sent this out. He signed it, your old daddy, granddaddy, and great-granddaddy, Frank R. Seventhal, God bless you all. And the poem is Patient Charity. They are such familiar, they are such dear familiar feet that go along the path with ours. Feet fast or slow and trying to keep pace. If they mistake or tread upon some flower that we would take upon our breast or bruise some reed, we must be mute, not turning quickly to impute grave fault, for they and we have such a little way to go, can be together such a little while upon the way. We must be patient while we stay. So many little faults we find. We see them, for love is not blind. We see them, but if you and I perhaps remember them some by and by, they will not be faults then, grave faults to you and me. Just odd ways, mistakes, or even less, remembrances to bless. Days change so many things, yes, hours. We see so differently in sun and showers. Mistaken words tonight may be so cherished by tomorrow's light. We must be patient, for we know there's such a little way to go.
Nance Ferguson Horowitz was born on January 8th, 1947 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, daughter of Earl Ferguson and Laverne Miskey of Wauwatosa, Milwaukee. Nance loved her parents, who were a major influence in her life. Her father was a creative artist. He worked in commercial art and later designed restaurants where he often created themed mural and artwork. He combined his love of airplanes with his talent to paint the murals, which now, to this day, hang in the Gallery of Flight at the Milwaukee Airport. He also had an intense interest in social justice causes, as did his wife, Nance Carol and Anne Marie's mother. She supported causes like education, political fairness, ecology, racial and gender equality, and equal access to opportunities. Their mother was a teacher, an organizer, a singer, a piano player, a quilter, a traveler, and even a computer guru. To her family, this mother of Nance and you two sisters who are here today, she was described as a role model to the family, a supporter, helmsman, an empathizer, and their rock of stability and sensibility. Nance received both her undergraduate and master's degrees in social work at the University of Wisconsin. She practiced psychotherapy at the Lighthouse Clinic, Milwaukee, and St. Luke's Hospital. And it was on September 15th, 2007 that Nance married her second husband, Mark. And then they moved to Colorado here, which was a state that she had cherished because she worked at a guest ranch in the Rocky Mountain National Park during summers while she was in college. After they moved here, Nance established a private psychotherapy practice in Old Town Fort Collins, and she was also on the trauma team of the Medical Center of the Rockies that's here in Loveland. It was a second marriage for both Nance and Mark, and they both reveled in traveling. After their honeymoon in Maine, they traveled in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick, enjoying the Irish and Scottish music that Nance loved. And then they continued their travels, not only within this state, Colorado, but the world. Galapagos, Peru, Indonesia, Ireland, the UK, Iceland, France, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, China, Pakistan, Italy, Romania, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, and the Philippines. And Nance did not like group travel. And so they reveled in staying in out of the way places as they did all of these world travels. Nance also loved architecture. And when she was still in Milwaukee, she built a Frank Lloyd Wright house, doing a lot of the work herself. And then when she met Mark, it turns out that he had dreamed of building a passive solar house. And so they embarked on a 2-year project to design and build their house north of Fort Collins, where they lived together for 11 years. I imagine some of you went to that house. Nance and Mark were involved with the international community at Colorado State University. I think some of you are here through that connection. They were homestay hosts to students from Pakistan and India. Nance was a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, and at the time of her death, she was doing some outstanding work for us here at the Namakwa congregation. She served as the secretary of our board and was also deeply engaged in helping us with our belated personnel policies and other really important things. She left a big box of papers that Mark gave to us. And we still miss her. When we have a board meeting, there's definitely an empty chair where Nance used to be. She was an avid reader, a member of 2 book clubs, and also she was a member of a Buddhist Sangha. Nance loved to cook. Do you know she had over 100 cookbooks and would dazzle people with the dinners that she was cooking for her dinner guests. Classical music was also a large part of Nance's life, attending the Fort Collins Symphony and the Bravo Music Festival in Vail. One summer, Nance and Mark went east and they attended the summer season of the Chicago, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Boston orchestras. That must have been quite a summer, Mark. Social justice, equality, and feminism were her sacred causes. Even back in high school, she participated in integration rallies. She spent summers in Boston and Baltimore on social justice causes, like her parents, and marched in rallies for women's equality. And I think if we do some more marches for women's equality, we can imagine that if she were still alive, she would be marching right alongside of us. You saw a slideshow as you were gathering, but let's now savor these pictures that depict the life of Nance.
Hi, can someone please unmute? We can't hear anything. I think it's muted. I'm sorry for the interruption.
It was during the World War II era. And, during the war, Earl and Laverne had my aunt, Carol, who's right there. And thankfully, after the war, they returned to Milwaukee. He was able to come back and he was safe. And my mom was born in 1947 on the south side of Milwaukee at Deaconese Hospital. And shortly after, my Aunt Anne was born as well. They grew up in a very small house. It was a 2-bedroom on South 20th Street. This was in an area with a lot of veterans starting families. It was a boomer era, and she had very fond memories of playing with the kids in the neighborhood. Lots of activities, board games, roller skating, in the winters, of course, ice skating at the local park. There's tobogganing, and of course, Leon's Frozen Custard on South 27th Street. If you ever are in Milwaukee, suggest you go. It was a wonderful time for her. Elementary school was Morgandale, and she would mention to us that they would call it Morgan Jail, of course.
Of course.
And then as she grew, they did move to a suburb in the Milwaukee area of Wauwatosa. In 1960, the family moved to this big suburban house on Stickney Avenue. Of course, I think of this house very fondly because my grandparents were still there when I was born. I think we were mentioning a lot of her passions. I won't go over all of them again, but I'll try to fill in some additional items that she was very passionate about. And of course, you know, a passionate person. She was involved with Girl Scouts. She played the piano. She was very fond of singing at the church. And one story that you didn't get, she was fond of this story. She skipped school in 1963. She saw a person speak, and you might have heard of him. It was Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow.
And then, yeah, she was very passionate about higher education. She started her college career at UW Milwaukee, and then continued it at the University of Wisconsin, where she got her bachelor's in social work. And later on, she got her master's in social work from UWM. Just a sec. And one of the driving forces in her life was helping people. She was very passionate about that, and that's why she chose social work. Some of the places that she worked, she was an administrator at McMahon Center. She was a school social worker in Greendale School District. She was a hospital social worker, and of course, she mentioned her private practice of therapy. She did that in Milwaukee. She did that locally, and of course, she was the hospital social worker locally as well. And she's also an author in helping people. I did see a copy of the book. It's outside. It's a book about adolescents post-treatment support. In addition, she was an adjunct professor at Cardinal Stritch University in the Milwaukee area. And she really enjoyed helping people. Another passion she had was being a mom and a grandmother. And yeah, unfortunately, if I brought my kids, it'd be too much. But yeah, my sister and my niece are here, and she's very proud of them. And growing up, we didn't have a lot, but we weren't without. She was a very fun parent. There was always a lot of trips, and have a lot of fond memories of going to the Milwaukee County Zoo, camping with other families, the Klugs especially, museum trips. Milwaukee has Summerfest in the July. The Wisconsin Dells, State Fair. We did a lot of things together, and she was always up for a fun time. And you know, if you knew her, she wasn't the biggest of sports fans, but she really encouraged that passion in me. It's a passion that I really have. And she says one of her favorite, she told me that one of her favorite memories was going to see my Little League games. And one of the sad things about COVID is my boys both started their Little League career this last year, and there was no traveling. And we actually had plans about right now for her to visit in Bellevue, Washington, and see them play. So I think she would have really enjoyed that. And then, of course, one of the things that I often think of her is when my boys fight. Boys, they're now 7 and 3. They're 3 years apart. My younger one will turn 4 next month. And when they fight, I often think of her, and I'm often getting some payback. You know, when I fought with Katie when we were younger. Yes, and I think we were mentioning one of her passions of architecture. You know, being a proud Wisconsinite, and another Wisconsinite being Frank Lloyd Wright. Of course, the house we mentioned and showed pictures of in Brookfield, Wisconsin, was built in 1997, and she named it Clada, which is Gaelic for love, loyalty, and friendship. And then I won't step on Mark's, their house together, but in 2010, they built the Solar House, which was a gorgeous house, and it's incredible how forward they were as a couple, and you know, it was a really special place they got to spend. And then I do want to, I'm very thankful about her meeting Mark. She really had a passion for traveling. The itineraries that she had were just huge and detailed, and we got to see everything when I was a part of that, but she got to see everything with all her travel partners. And yeah, that slideshow was incredible. And thank you, Mark, for doing that. They did a lot of traveling together, and they had such a fun time. And then the dinner parties, she really, yeah, over 100 books. Yeah, it was very incredible, very fun to experience food with her. And then, yeah, just to finish off, and it's really sad to lose her. Unfortunately, the lessons she taught me have come to an end. But yeah, being a parent, try to continue her values. Raising my 2 boys. Thank you.
Yeah, these big hearts that they drew. Mark, are you ready to come up?
Well, Nathan's presentation reminded me that one should always coordinate your remarks with your fellow speakers. I'm going to have to ad lib a lot because a lot of the things I have here, Nathan has covered. I don't want to duplicate things. So let me start out by saying that Nance and I met 15 years ago. I had just been divorced, was depressed. Well, how am I going to meet people? Well, the internet was there. I found a site called Green Singles. So I posted my bio on Green Singles. And what pops up? I got an email from this woman from Milwaukee. We emailed back and forth many times. And we clearly were interested in each other. And I said, you know, this is not sufficient. I think we need to exchange phone numbers. Well, that took up a lot of time because every day for the next, I don't know how many weeks, we spoke on the phone at least an hour a day. And it was clear there was a deep connection between us. But then my skepticism came up and I said, you know, you're 1,000 miles away. I mean, how can this work? And she says, have no fear. I'm going to work it out. She used her frequent flyer miles, flew out to Fort Collins. And on the trip from the airport to Fort Collins, she took out of her purse a small little statue of the Indian god Ganesh, which is half man, half elephant, which I didn't realize is the Hindu god to overcome obstacles. So her way to overcome obstacles was to use frequent flyer miles. Well, we had a magical weekend. I said, you know, if it didn't work out, I wanted to give this woman a great time. So she at least she'll remember Fort Collins and it won't be a loss for her. So I planned 2 scrumptious home-cooked meals. We had a romantic dinner at Jay's Bistro, if you know that place in Old Town. After that, we went to the Fort Collins Symphony and she looked elegant in her black dress and her necklace. I'm very proud to be with her and we met. Actually, I remember meeting Carol and her friend Bob there that night. So the symphony was wonderful. And we went snowshoeing in Rocky Mountain National Park. You saw a picture of that in the video. And we kept up that tradition for many years. We would go back at the same time, same place, take a picture and so how the snow would go high and low and against that Bear Lake sign. But 2 of the most amazing things were we went to the Shambhala Center up at Red Feather Lakes. And she had an interest in Buddhism. And in the past 2 years, she was a member of a Sangha group online from Milwaukee and read a lot of Buddhist books. But the most amazing thing we did was she brought a CD with her. Kirtan music, if you know Indian kirtan music. And it's just wild. I mean, tabla's going and horns are going and drums are beating and we got up and we danced together. It was just magical. It was pretty clear after that weekend we were in love. There was just no doubt about it. So I went to Milwaukee every 2 weeks, stayed a week, came back, and then she came out here. We went backpacking in Aspen, did other things out here. In Milwaukee, when she was working, I got a bike and I loved it. I biked around the lake while she was at work. Then I was doing some work with a nonprofit, so I had some online work to do myself. So I was busy, she was busy, and we got to know each other even more. 6 months later, we were married in Maine at the home of a very old friend of mine, Ted, who I lived with in the Peace Corps in the Philippines. And it was a very, it was an incredible place. My brother Jesse was my best man there. And we just had a great time. We just got lobsters, sat on the rocks, had a lobster bake, went down to the dock and got mussels and then cooked mussels, which I love because they didn't cost anything. Just go down and pick them off the pier. That was followed by a 2-week honeymoon in Canada. Went to New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, where Nance was able to relive the time she had in Milwaukee going to Cayley's. I had never heard of a Cayley before, which is an Irish songfest. In Nova Scotia, there's a lot of them. We went to many of them there and had a great time. Had a bottle of champagne left over from the wedding, a couple bottles actually left over from the wedding, and we went to Prince Edward Island. We got mussels, we got clams, and find a picnic bench, and we had a great time. And that was really the beginning of our travels together. And when she came to Fort Collins, we embarked on travels. We actually went to 19 countries together, many of whom you saw pictures in the video. You know many of the things she did very well because you're friends of her. She was a mentor to her granddaughter, Hannah, who she loved dearly, who's here tonight, this afternoon. You heard her being a gourmet cook and the dinners that she cooked, and with great dinner parties. She would take 3 hours to cook a meal, plus dessert. She cherished relationships. She was on the phone a lot. She'd be on the phone for an hour with someone. I don't know who it was. I didn't ask. But particularly during COVID, when she couldn't see anyone, she really was on the phone. She got involved with the international community at CSU. And we had 2 homestay students, Sue Smith, not quite a homestay, but we met him through homestay. And then Ali, who wound up getting a master's degree in engineering at CSU. We were with him about 5 years, and we got incredibly close to Ali, and I think she considered Ali her second son. I don't know if you knew that, Nathan, but she really was taken with Ali and had a great relationship with him. We probably saw him every 2 weeks. And then Ali got married and invited us to his wedding in Lahore. So I told Nance, I'm not going to Lahore for 10 days and just flying back. Let's have a great adventure. So I suggested 3 months in Southeast Asia. So we went to Pakistan, we went to Thailand, And in Thailand, my college roommate, Jerry, was a Peace Corps volunteer in Thailand. So I called him and said, okay, we're going to Thailand. What should we do? He said, you can't miss Sukhothai. Sukhothai is an ancient capital in Thailand, north of Bangkok. So we went there, and it's, you know, Bangkok is crowded, it's noisy, it's not a great place. It's not a lot of fun. But if you ever get to Thailand, go to Sukhothai. It is a quiet little town, maybe only 20,000 people. Very little poverty there. Houses were nice, very well kept. The ruins, this was I think Sukhothai was the capital from, I don't know, 1300 to 1500 in Thailand. Wonderful ruins. We did it at night. We joined a British couple, joined them in their rickshaw and went around at night. It was wonderful. And it was clear after that that Nance was taken with Sukhothai as a place to be. And when we came back to the US, we'd always talked about getting a cat. Well, when COVID hit and we weren't seeing anyone, I said, okay, we got to get a cat now. There's no question. We need some companionship here. So our friends, Paulette and Wally Neese, were in the audience here, congregation rather. They do foster parenting for kittens, and I wanted a kitten. So I called them, I said, you got any kittens available? I said, oh, we just unloaded our last batch of foster kittens last week, and they're all gone because people love kittens. They get adopted right away. But they said, we have this wonderful 4-year-old cat. You might be interested in that cat. So we visited them. We saw this cat, and we both fell in love with the cat, and we adopted her. And the question was, what name would we give this cat? So each of us had a vote in this. My vote was Cat Ba. Cat Ba is an island in North Vietnam that we kayaked around. They said, well, Cat Ba, the most obvious name for a cat is Cat Ba. It's like the last cat I had was named Kathmandu because I picked up the cat. I was traveling on my 6-month hippie trip from Germany to Nepal. And we were in Istanbul. There was a man with a box of kittens. And we said, let's get a mascot for this trip. So what do you name the mascot? Kathmandu, because that was the end of our journey, was to go to Kathmandu. So the cat had to be in my kitten name, but I got outvoted, and our cat is now named Sukhothai. She got very involved with the international community at CSU. Did some work with international friends. And I was involved with the Global Village Museum with the international community. I was on the board there for a while. And she also was an ESL teacher, or was an aide for an ESL teacher. And she was in one class where she saw this woman who was sort of squinting at the board, and she said, oh, this woman probably needs glasses. Well, that woman turned out to be Gulsoom, who's here with her family, Mahmoud and Abdul from Syria, refugees, and Gulsoom became an American citizen about 3 months ago.
Oh.
She had refugee status, studied for the exam, and she's a smart woman, and she passed the exam with flying colors. And she was just learning English back then when Nance met her, and now when you talk with her, she'll talk your ear off in English, and in Arabic if you're an Arabic speaker as well. And we've gotten very close with Gulsoom, with Abdul, with Mahmoud, and with her husband Mazen, who I hope is on Zoom watching in Dubai. He's working in Dubai, and very fond of Mazen and the whole family. So she really introduced me to relationships with people around the world. And when we traveled, that was important to her. We were in Indonesia. And one day she said, I gotta get some chocolate. So we passed this little store, and she went in there and she asked for chocolate. Well, of course, she didn't speak English, but a woman came up to her and said, can I help you? She said, yeah, I want to get some chocolate. So she helped to get chocolate. Now this woman turned out to be an English teacher at the local school, And she said to us, you know, you might want to tour the high school tomorrow. My husband is assistant principal. Why don't you go there and he'll take you through. So we did that the next morning. We went AWOL from our turtle conservation program, which is what we were volunteering for turtle conservation in Indonesia. And when we finished the tour, he said to us, oh, by the way, we're going to a Hindu wedding this afternoon. You want to go with us? So, not wanting to miss a local custom and something different, we said, of course. Well, you won't believe it. Nance got on the back of the motorcycle. I got on the back of the other motorcycle. We went up the mountain and we attended this incredible Hindu wedding. I'll never forget it. Great food, great times. And when we came back, this is getting to a point here, by the way, this story of relationships. They asked Nance, you know, we have this niece who lives up in the mountains and she's going to wind up marrying a farmer. And she can be poor her whole life. We would like to send her to tourism school so she can get a job in Bali. We're on an island called Nusa Penida, which is about a 45-minute boat ride off of Bali. And that's where the big tourism industry is in Bali. So they said, would you like to sponsor our niece in tourism school? So Nance says, yes. So we got home, Nance sent a check for $600 to pay for her tuition in tourism school. And Oka, many months later, sent an email saying she graduated, she got a job in Bali. So, you know, if it wasn't for Nance, that relationship, and now of course we're in, you know, we're Facebook friends, you know, I on our trip to Southeast Asia, I said, let's go back to Indonesia and visit Oka. But it was 3 months already and that wasn't in the cards at the time. Things you may not know about Nance. She was an author. Nathan mentioned that. There's a book that you can see out here that she wrote in the 90s, and she did not self-publish it. She got a publisher to take it on, and she went around the country selling the book. I have a wife that went on a book tour. Unbelievable. And she did something else. She wrote a short story. We were in the Galapagos on a boat, 16 passengers. Half of us were Canadians and Americans, the other half were from Greece. So in talking to the folks from Greece, we found out that every year they take a trip together. They meet at a coffee shop in Crete and decide on where they're going to go on a trip the next year together. Well, Nance picked up on this and wrote a short story. Now I got 25 copies out there. My printer went crazy printing them out. And Nance, why didn't you put page numbers on the pages? The computer's spitting them out and some are out of order and I'm trying to, anyway, it's difficult. But if you don't get a copy of it, email me and I will email you a copy of her short story. She did a lot of research on it and it's about the skull of the patron saint of Crete, Titus. So, and the skull was stolen from Crete and went to Ireland. Of all places, Ireland. Of course, she's Irish. And as Nathan said, she was an adjunct professor at Cardinal Stritch University in Milwaukee of social work. She was proud of that. And when she came to Fort Collins, she had to reinvent herself because this was a very foreign territory to her. Although she had spent a summer at the Green Mountain Ranch in Rocky Mountain National Park and loved Colorado in her summer there, this was still pretty foreign to her. But she pulled herself together. She started her own private psychotherapy practice in Old Town and worked at Medical Center of the Rockies on the trauma team. She volunteered at the Bean Cycle bookstore. She volunteered at Wolverine Press, Public House. She joined the Unitarian Church. And I guess most Most important for me, one of my dreams in coming to Colorado was to build a passive solar house. I had retired myself from my job in the city of Alexandria, and I always wanted to build a house. My father was a builder, and somehow it was in my blood. And I was interested in sustainability, so I wanted to build a passive solar house. And Nance joined me in that, and I'll never forget her on her hands and knees staining the concrete floor. I think, Jesse, you were there at the time we were doing that. So she really pitched in and helped with the house. I did a lot of work myself. She was still working at the time, obviously. Well, all of us remember her chuckle. Some of us remember the importance she had for her family. I hope many of us remember her passion: civil rights, human rights, women's rights. Nathan alluded to the fact that her father was a great supporter of civil rights, and Nance in high school went to one summer to Boston, one summer to Baltimore, working on civil rights projects while in high school. And Nance and I went to the Women's March in Denver, and I guess it was 2018. To honor Nance, I chose to sing Amazing Grace. Chose it for many reasons. One is she's a great admirer of Barack Obama, and we all remember President Obama singing Amazing Grace after the church shooting in South Carolina. But I also chose it because I took an online guitar class last December, January, and February. And the first song we learned was Amazing Grace. And I am not great on the guitar. And I had to play this thing probably at least 120 or 150 times so I could just get the muscle memory and learn it in my head. So I subjected Nance to that tune for I don't know how many weeks. So Nance, you'll remember it, I'm sure. Amazing Grace was written by John Newton in 1779. He was an Anglican clergyman. He'd actually been involved in the slave trade. He was on a ship that transported slaves to the New World. But after that, he studied Christian theology, and it totally transformed him. He became an abolitionist. And he wrote the words to that poem. In 1835, William Walker, an American, put it to music. And there's a secular and religious meaning of that poem. I'm going to give the secular meaning that it has for me. And to me, the secular meaning is the ability of people to transform themselves. You know, here he was involved in the slave trade, and then Newton became an abolitionist. He transformed himself, and that inspired him to write the song. Now, there's a lot of Christian symbolism in it. I'm not going to sing that part. That's in the fourth verse. I'm not going to subject it to any more than the first verse. But Nance transformed me. That's why I chose this. She counts with me on being patient. I'm incredibly impatient on the telephone, all kinds of work, in the store, with Nance. Kindness, Mark, you got to be kinder in life. You got to be kinder and gentler to people. You got to be polite. So that's why I'm going to sing the song. Now, there's a good chance of a couple stray notes here. But you all know the tune, so you will forgive me. There's the first stray note.
It's your pick. It went on the
Where's the
floor.
pick? It's on the floor.
Your left foot, yeah.
Fortunately, after 7 months, I can bend down. With my back surgery, I can actually bend down and touch my toes, so I can pick the pickup. Nance also nursed me through 5 eye surgeries, 1 prostate surgery, and my back fusion. So thank you, Nance, for that. I'm going to play the tune first because I haven't quite coordinated the tune with the music, but I think it sets a good tone. See? I knew it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. So we're here honoring Nance, remembering her. We can remember her, but I think what's more important, if each of you would commit yourselves to what she believed in: civil rights, human rights, women's rights, relationships among people, and in your hearts commit yourself to making those your personal journey as well, and doing what you can through volunteering, through donating, through creating relationships with people, diverse people from around the world. That would be the greatest gift that you can give, Nance.
Yeah, you're her legacy. Thank you. I feel like Nance is here. So it's already been more than an hour, but I would like to invite just a few more of you, if you'd like, to share some memories. And after the service is over, Mark, and you got some delicious food from Whole Foods. We'll have a reception outdoors. But I know that Nance's friend of 30 years, Arlene, I would like to invite you to speak. And because we're on Zoom, if you could come up here and I'll give you the microphone, and that way you'll be part of the recording. You want to be behind the pulpit or just? Okay. Yeah. So speak into it like this.
I'm not good at public speaking, so I wrote down some things. Dear family and friends of Nance.
Put it closer to your mouth.
Sorry. Dear family and friends of Nance, my name is Arlene Clavins, and I've been honored to have a shared friendship with Nance that began more than 30 years ago. We met when we both worked in the Greendale School District, a suburb just outside of Milwaukee. Nancy, as she was known then, was a high school social worker, and I was an orchestra teacher. When we first met, we were both busy juggling work and family life, and that certainly didn't leave a lot of time in our lives for anything else but somehow we managed to carve out bits and pieces of time to begin what became a very important, meaningful, and very special friendship. And so what I'd like to do today is share some of my special memories of Nance that I will forever carry in my heart. She was, as you all probably know, a very well-respected social worker and therapist. Nance lived a very purposeful and generous life. She was loyal. She had clearly defined priorities: family, God, friends, and amazing kindness and concerns for others, all others. She was a force for good in this world, all of her volunteer work, much of which she shared and pursued with you too, Mark. She was always very proud of your service in the Peace Corps, and that sense of giving back was something you deeply shared and continued together. She valued education, knowing it was something that could never be taken away. She was intellectually curious and always happy to share her meaningful insights with anyone who would listen. I learned a lot. Nance had a fun sense of humor and a love of life, all life. Many of my fond memories were of travel with both Nance and then Nance and Mark. She and I shared many life experiences with each other, and that includes her meeting and marrying you, Mark. I remember her telling me of your first in-person meeting, and I suspected the two of you were destined to be together. Nance embraced her new life in Colorado and all it had to offer: the wonderful outdoors, the wonderful people, of course, skiing, hiking, watching sunsets, and also the opportunity to work with foreign students as they adjusted to a new life in the United States. Her involvement in human and feminine rights, her involvement with her church, making new friends and having wonderful gatherings in your home. She used the privilege she was born with. She worked hard and shared in innumerable ways with others. We played together. We talked about our volunteering and our families, which always came first to both of us. We shared activities. One of our favorites when she would come to Milwaukee often to visit her mother while she was still alive was shopping at our favorite consignment store. And we loved the symphony, we loved theater, love for the outdoors, love of good food and good people. I think my fondest memories were of ours spent together, not always in person, but often, as you mentioned, Mark, long conversations over the phone. We shared so very much, good and difficult times. We were always there for each other. Several years ago, my daughter said to me, one of my wishes as I get older is to have a friendship like you and Nance share. And I'm so happy for you that you have that. I will be forever grateful to Nance for caring love we shared, and the amazing friend to her. And I'd like to end what I'm saying here with a little benediction that's always been very important to my family. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
I know that probably each of you has your own stories and memories about Nance. So how about maybe one other person? If there's anybody like in the front row, family members who want to speak, or anybody want to come up, or should we just do the reception? All right. So you will have an opportunity to share stories in our great outdoors in just a couple of minutes. Bye. We knew how much Nance loved your music, Brian. Mark said how often the music was playing at their house. Our closing reading is a Jewish prayer of remembrance. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have a joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, when we have achievements that are based on hers, we remember her. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, at the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. At the blueness of the skies and the warmth of summer, at the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. At the rising of the sun and at its setting, we remember her. As long as we live, she too will live. For now, she is a part of us as we remember her. And for our benediction, from Ecclesiastics, to everything there is a season, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time for love and a time for peace. Now we have come to that time for peace. We were not meant to live forever, and it is that very fact which makes life so precious. We all have our mistakes and weaknesses. Our mistakes and weaknesses die with us. What alone endures is the spirit in which a person has met life. This does not die. The victories of someone's character and their spirit lives on. Goodness and truth do not die, but they live on to bless those left behind. So this is the central message of every major religion. That what is truly good cannot be destroyed. The good and the blessings that Nance bestowed in her life all over the world, all of the relationships that she built, do not die, but they live on through us, and we will remember her. So rest in peace, Nance. We promise we will remember you. So thank you so much on behalf of Nance's family, on behalf of the congregation that she served. I want to thank Bill Rosequist and Katie Fox, who are upstairs there doing the technical part. And as I mentioned, we have a reception now where Mary Ellen, thank you for your beautiful harp music. And again, thank you, Ryan, for your music. So as we go out, we'll be going around the building and you'll see there are some tables set up and some really delicious afternoon treats. And so as we spend some more time together, if Nance could be any place right now, this would be where she would be. So blessings on all of you. Thank you for coming. And rest in peace, Nance.